Robert A. Wall, the voice of the jungle, broadcasting on the DVC to all points unknown. If you're within the sound of my voice, you're listening to Welcome Home Podcast on the DVC.
Hello, welcome to the Waitlist. This is, I don't know if everybody knows what our Waitlist shows are, especially if you're new, but a lot of times, especially during the summertime, we are busy.
Yep.
We got things going on. We're not around. So we really do this Waitlist show as a topic-based show that we can, use on the weeks that we're not here. And that's
it is a shorter show. So
yeah.
This is not a full-size show. It's meant to be bite-sized, and we have usually 1 to 2 topics that we'll talk about, and that'll be it. So
yeah,
this time around,
I love this topic so much.
All right, okay, and I know Damon's going to be mad that he wasn't here for this, but unfortunately, it just didn't line up for timing. But the topic is. Annual passes have become a bad deal for theme parks. This is an article that was posted in the Orange County Register, talking about that. All right, I guess the proper summary is thinking that maybe theme parks should not be selling annual passes. Like this is kind of an interesting hot take because.
Yeah. Well, especially from Robert Niles, too, who is a pretty well-respected journalist around theme parks, right? He's a pretty big theme park writer.
Yeah. So yeah, the premise is that the reason that we're paying more for everything at Disney is because of annual passes. And that if Disney stopped, or not Disney, but if theme parks stopped offering annual passes, would that be beneficial to everybody as a whole? And then, obviously people who have annual passes, have to pay, but the thinking is that, if everybody, was paying the same price, it would actually bring down the cost of things like Genie Plus and stuff like that, because I guess the argument here is that, services like Genie Plus, they are factoring in that there are annual pass holders that, they're not spending a ton of money, or, they bought their pass and they're getting a great deal on it, and they have to upsell all these other things so that they're still making money on those people coming to the park, and that they're not just effectively having a free day in the park. So
yeah,
the thinking is that annual passes are, while a few people may benefit from the annual passes, it's punishing the larger theme park goers. So this is an interesting thought.
It's an interesting take. Yeah, no. So I just want to read some of the things he wrote in this article, because I do think he has a decent argument, actually, which is why I'm excited to talk about this, because I would have never thought about it this way, but he did. But so what he said is, the move to passes from daily tickets has created profound financial and operational effects on the industry. And it led me to wonder if they'd be better off if parks did away with their annual passes and went back to daily tickets. And I mean, listen, he acknowledges that this sounds crazy, right?
Yeah, it does.
He said, I suspect the dramatic increase in prices for daily tickets and prices, as well as development of paid line skipping services such as Six Flags' Flash Pass and Genie Plus, are direct consequences of the park's success selling annual passes. Annual passes started as an attempt to increase revenue per visitor by upselling them to a higher price pass, but the result has been a decrease in revenue per visit, which is what you were saying, Trevor. And so as pass holders chase value by visiting more, they crowd out people that are just buying tickets for the day, and that makes the parks in turn charge for higher daily ticket prices, more for in park things, and basically what his argument here is, because of that, it's driving prices higher for everybody. And he also mentions here, though, too, that the irony of this is that the higher prices drive more dedicated visitors to buy annual passes, which perpetuates the cycle, right? Because So, and it's interesting. And, he says casual fans stop going to Disneyland and other theme parks. And Robert Niles is, this is Orange County Register. I think he's mostly Disneyland, but I mean, he talks about Disney parks in general. So, but he, mentions how Disneyland and other theme parks, because they can't afford them anymore. And so, you end up with this conversation that we've had a lot where, in a lot of ways, Disney and Universal and some of these bigger theme parks are becoming places that only people with a lot of money can go to. Right. And that's obviously not what Walt envisioned in the beginning. Right. And, but it's interesting though, because I just don't, I see Disney doing more of this now because they're limiting the amount of season passes or annual passes that they're allowing. But, over at Disneyland, like they'll start selling them and stop selling them and, start selling them again. They go back and forth, but, they still exist. Right. But he said, he actually said, imagine if, in 1 January, the parks did without annual season passes for a year just to see how much demand actually exists for their parks at regular prices. And he says, I suspect that the parks would quickly have to lower their daily ticket prices to keep their parks filled, but their average revenue per visit would increase with pass holders out of the mix. Now, I know we've actually, I think this argument has been in the Discord before that, that there are a lot of people that feel like, well, no, I'm not a less valuable customer because I go more often, and every time I go, I spend a lot of money, right?
Yeah, that's. This is the hard part of trying to rationalize this, right? Is you do have different groups of people here that people who are annual pass holders, they're saying I'm going enough that it's justified for me to get a deal or I think that's part of the premise too of annual passes is that if you're and actually to the earlier point about people buying into it, and part of the reason that I bought into it in the past is that when you go enough or when you go past a certain point, it does start getting expensive, and when you start looking at the best way to save money, and the annual passes are the best way to save money if you start going past a certain number of days, right?
Yeah.
So the interesting thing is that it's a weird flip of who your target audience is at the end of the day, because we've talked about this before, like you said, the difference between California and Florida is California has a lot more local traffic that goes to Disneyland, where it is and how long it's been there and everything. There's a lot more locals that go there, but that also means that the amount of pass holders they have is a lot higher too, because for exactly the same reasons, people, there's people that I've done the same thing too with like local theme parks here, is that I want to go, but I will always look at, if I plan to go more than, 4 times in a year, I'll get the annual pass because it saves me money. Right. But what would end up happening is those people would look at it and go, well, there's no annual pass this year. Right. Yeah. So they would go, well, I may go once or twice, but it's really not worth my money. Like as a local person, the reason that they go as much as they do is because they're not paying for it. But if all of a sudden it was, well, no, you got to pay the same as everybody else, suddenly a lot of those local people are just not going anymore. So that immediately changes the demographic of people that are coming into the parks. And that goes back to, what he's saying here later in the article, that all of a sudden Disney would have to be like, well, hold up, we need to start offering, more ticket packages for travelers. We need to start bringing people into the park, and they would stop looking at locals and they would start, focusing on giving discount tickets to, if you're buying a travel package or whatever. Like we actually, as a Canadian, I do see that a lot. Like they do habitually offer 25% off tickets. And the whole reason for that is that for our dollar conversion, it kind of lines it up that we're paying the same price as a full price ticket in the States, because otherwise, after the conversion rate, we are paying a lot more money. Then you get more of those travelers, you get more of those non-locals in the park. And is that what Disney wants? Like, I guess
I think
the thing
Disney
is,
wants whatever is going to make them the most money, right? I mean,
yeah, you're right. And yeah, I guess you're right. The thing is that is kind of what they want, because, the people who are traveling, there's more people that this suddenly is on their radars. Oh, I could do a Disney trip, or I could, the prices are low enough that I can justify, taking a trip to Disney, thereby, if they're going, they're spending money on souvenirs, they're spending money on experiences and stuff that locals don't do. So, so it kind of it does make a lot of sense why you would not want to have annual pass holders. Like but yeah, the thing is that there is a threshold there of you got to make sure that it's attractive enough, but also not too attractive that the part there's again that balancing thing that we've talked about before, where they don't want to make it too cheap or too expensive that people aren't coming. But the interesting other side of this is that the annual pass holders and like the short term of not having annual pass holders is, they have to do a lot of advertising and coaxing people to the parks. When you have pass holders, those people are consistent.
that's true.
And maybe that's something that Disney is looking at, is they like the fact that, they know these people are not necessarily spending their money, but they know they can always get them in the park, which automatically gives them the opportunity to advertise all these upcharges to them. So maybe they actually prefer this because there's not a question of, we threw out this advertising, or, hopefully we bring people to the park, versus we know these people are coming to the park. And once they're in the park, we have the opportunity to, sell a lot more things to them. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of interesting that, like, I can see both sides of it. And I don't know that I would, I wouldn't hate it if they did away with annual passes, but I also don't know that would make it a better experience, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it would either, right? Like, this is an interesting thing too. He mentions, my best recent experience at parks outside of Disney and Universal have been at Silver Dollar City and Holiday World, parks located far from big cities that provide a ready supply of annual pass holders. They have had to survive on daily ticket sales, which have led to a better park experience. I mean, yeah, but there's the other part of those things too. It's like, sure, they've had to survive on daily ticket sales, but if they did sell annual passes, or and maybe they do. If there's just not enough locals to buy them, then you're having less people come into the park anyway, right? On a consistent basis. Like, I don't know if that's really proof of anything,
Yeah, it's, and I guess I've also seen it go the other way. So we have a local theme park here that like I went there all the time as a kid, and it was actually funny because they had, part of the reason that they were able to function for a long time was they actually had an agreement with Hanna-Barbera. So a lot of the park was themed like the Flintstones. And this was like back in like the 80s and the 90s, right? And so, yeah, I know, but hey, Hanna-Barbera was big for,
listen, I had my Flintstone vitamins.
Yep,
I was there.
Exactly. But the thing is that it was a popular park. They did sell annual passes as well. But again, even as locals, like, people were not buying up the annual passes. And then the interesting thing that happened was that Hanna-Barbera got bought up by Warner Brothers. And so then the theme park had to get rid of all the Hanna-Barbera theming, which is funny that some of it is still there, but they've like painted over it or tried to make it like not look like the old Flintstone stuff, which is
put like a handlebar mustache on Fred Flintstone. It's like, now he's not Fred Flintstone.
Well, no, the Flintstone statues were gone, but like they actually had like, there was a like his car, like you could actually sit in the Flintstone car. And I believe that might be gone now, but I remember it was there. But at one point they like repainted, like they put like extra stuff on it. And they made it look enough not like the car. But
yeah,
anyway, but back to the point of like, once that Hanna-Barbera sponsorship stopped, the park's attitude really changed. Like that was where I noticed, they needed to up what they were doing for local sales, because they, like, part of the reason that they were able to offer what they did was that they had alternative money coming in from the sponsorship. So, they could offer better deals on tickets and stuff like that. So that's part of, that's another factor in this too, is that, outside money sponsoring the park, which, Disney does do this as well. They have sponsorships in the park that help offset their costs. So, something else to think about. But what ended up happening with this particular theme park was the experience there got to a point where it felt bad. Like when I got to, I went there many times over the years. And then eventually, when my son was very young, we went there. And again, this was post all this Hanna-Barbera stuff. And we went in there, and I think like the first 2 trips we were there, I went back begrudgingly because it was like yeah. You could see that like the people running the place, like you could see that they were just like scrambling to keep it open. Like it did not do well for a while. And I think the thing, again, like it's actually turned back around again over the years, but that was again because somebody somewhere has invested money into it, and they actually like built some new rides and did a couple of things to spruce up the park. And now it's back to being like a place that people want to go year over year, right? Like it's a local theme park that, and part of the problem too is, living in Alberta, it's really only open for about like 4 months of the year because it gets too cold to run a theme park, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So the interesting thing is that, them not, like, they did offer annual passes, but at various points, the annual passes were not always like, there was points where like an annual pass would be the equivalent of like 2 days at the park, which when you think about it, is like, they're really just trying to get anybody in the door, because it's like, if you buy an annual pass, or, if you go there more than twice and the annual pass pays for itself, like that's a really cheap, good deal. But it was also reflective of the state that the park was in too. So there is a floor to how low you can go, I guess, with offering up things like annual passes. I don't think removing them altogether is a great idea, because saying that, and I know he says in this article, he argues that this place relies entirely on ticket sales. I don't think even these parks that are not necessarily connected to a major city, that they're entirely relying on daily ticket sales. I think there is still an aspect of annual passes that are happening, but again, it's a balancing act of, is making it too cheap or too available actually brings down the quality of the park as well.
Well,
right?
And to your point, I just pulled up Silver Dollar City. They do have annual passes. They're seasonal passes. They're not annual passes, but it's effect, like, again, seasonal. Like it's the same thing as the theme park up here, that they don't they don't run all year, right? So it's not you get a yearly pass. It's really it's for like 3 or 4 months or whatever. Whereas Disney, Universal, both Disneyland and Disney World, both were built in places that have year-round good weather. So I don't know if you call this time of year good weather, but
better weather than I got. So. Yes,
better than your weather. But interestingly enough, it really you're right, because you're paying a lot less and they're making their money in a much shorter time span. Interestingly enough, my local theme park, which is Carowinds, and they're owned by Cedar Fair, which is now Six Flags Cedar Fair. They're actually headquartered, Six Flags Cedar Fair are going to be headquartered out of where I live, right? So, growing up, I went to Six Flags Great Adventure in New Jersey, which is a huge theme park. I mean, it's and you get people from New York coming down, you get people from Pennsylvania, you get people from Philly coming over, and so you kind of it's kind of centrally located in a place where there's a lot of people, right? but they still had annual passes too. I used to get annual passes there, even though, they were only open for certain amounts of time a year. But down here at Carowinds, they actually had announced, interestingly enough, a few months back that they were going to operate year round, which they were not doing before. And then a couple months later, they were like, just kidding. but it interests me to, like, I wonder if that has, something to do with the way the tickets are selling, or how many people they got to be annual pass holders, or, there's a lot of interesting things here about the finances and the operations of theme parks that, really, is what he's arguing here, right? And he's even mentioning too, cheap streaming services helped kill demand for box office movies and linear TV. Annual passes have trapped theme parks and their customers into what has become a bad deal. I don't know if I would call it a bad deal for customers, right? Because, like, if I go to my local Carowinds, it's like $100 for a season pass. And like a daily pass is, I don't even know what a daily pass is, but it's, 2 trips
like
and I
20,
pay
30
that off.
bucks. Yeah. So yeah, like what I was talking about is like, 2 or 3 trips, it's justified, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like a daily ticket. I'm just going to pull it up. Yeah. So a daily ticket, they're doing a promotion right now that's $40 a head, right? Like, so if you go 3 times, you've already made your money back. So, like, to me, that's a good deal. But I understand what he's also saying by the idea of all the upcharges are a result of that. But I don't know if they really are, though. I just think they want more revenue and they're trying to charge more for stuff. I don't know.
But there is another factor here that I feel is being ignored. And this goes back to what I was saying about the Hanna-Barbera sponsorship is, so you're talking about Carowinds and how it's run by Six Flags, right?
Yeah. Well, basically everything outside of Disney and Universal now is Carowinds. is a Cedar Fair or Six Flags.
Right.
That
thing is,
conglomerate owns everything pretty much.
Yeah. So the thing is that all of these other theme parks, they have money coming to them through like deals from their parent company or sponsorship or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's not exclusively, you can't just exclusively say, oh, the ticket prices affect, the quality of the park, the, how busy the park is, what kind of, experiences like there is a lot more factors here than just, I don't believe saying that, if we killed annual passes entirely, that it would make for a better experience, because I think the other side of that too is, the companies investing money into these parks. If the park is trying to get people to come there and they have a bad year for whatever reason, part of like people investing, like including sponsors and stuff, is that they want to make sure that, the money that they're putting in is justified. And if a company can say, well, we've got, or a theme park says, hey, we have this many people coming through the gate every day, but then also, you have guaranteed people coming to your stuff via annual pass holders. That is a selling point too. And that also, like, it all affects one another. It's not fair to say that, if you got rid of annual pass holders, that, it would just naturally make for a better deal, because it does, like, you wouldn't necessarily get the sponsorship that you do. You wouldn't necessarily get the investment in the park either, because the park would be just trying to make ends meet. I know, like, Disney's not trying to make ends meet. But,
Disney would be fine. Yeah.
But a lot of parks would, like I said, that's actually what happened with our local park, was that because they lost the sponsorship, they went very quickly from, being like, it felt not like Disney, but it felt like, it was a nice theme park, and it was themed after, a known IP and all that. And they very quickly devolved into survival mode, which almost turned it into like a carnival, which, if you know the difference between like a theme park and a roadside carnival, like it's a very different feel, right? Like, well, not having the revenue from annual pass holders could also, be a means that people say, well, I'm not going to sponsor something in your park. And then that actually hurts the park on a larger scale than just having those annual pass holders there. Like I said, it's a weird thing, and I'm not arguing that they should keep annual pass holders either, but I feel like there's maybe what he's saying here is that revisiting the way annual passes work, or maybe like Disney does do that. They're always looking at blockout dates and limiting it, because you don't want it to run too much that the annual pass holders are kind of driving the feel, or driving the direction of the park, but you also don't want to necessarily cut out that demographic either.
Well,
right?
and to your point, right? So like Disney's been experimenting with this for a long time now, right? Mm-hmm. Where, like you said, they've been having blackout dates. They've been having, you pay more for the privilege to skip the blackout dates, right? And the other part, kind of what you're talking about, Trevor, it's like, if you were to get rid of the annual passes, then you're also going to miss out on filling the space of the parks year round, right? Even though Disney's busier most of the time now, right? Like, so there are very few off seasons, as everybody says now, but there are still off times, right, where it's not that busy. And if you didn't have annual passes, a lot of annual pass holders will go during those times because the parks aren't as busy, and they're going and they're still spending money. But if you were to get rid of that altogether, they probably wouldn't decide to go on a daily basis, and then you don't get that revenue from those people that are coming in. Right. And listen, I get it, because you're going to have some annual pass holders that are just going to come to the park, do a couple rides, and go home and not spend a dime. Right. Like, that's understandable. Right. I would do that if I lived close by. I would, pop in for, go on Spaceship Earth and go home. But it's interesting. And the idea of this, if you just get rid of park hold, because even, before Genie Plus was a charge service, like, annual passes still existed, right? Like, it's not like
and really the value associated with that was actually pretty huge, because you were being able to use the fast passes and all that for free.
Exactly.
So,
I would almost say, like, if you want to do that, right, like, maybe you just charge the annual pass holders for Genie Plus, and then everybody that buys a daily ticket gets Genie Plus for free. You know what I mean? Because, like, if you already are valuing the daily ticket holders, or the 7-8 day ticket holders more than, if those people bring in more revenue and you don't need that extra revenue from them, then you reward them with buying daily tickets instead of buying the annual pass.
Maybe that's the perk, is that it gives people the ability to argue, versus, like you said, buying a 7 or 8 day ticket or getting the annual pass. I think we've all kind of done this math, is like, which plays out better. They've also done similar things, like, the dining plan thing is not the best example, but because they've done like the dining plan with a room reservation thing, but really, like, it doesn't actually save you money. But Disney definitely has posed that as a perk, or as a to get people in the park. And I remember with fast passes that they did. Didn't they have a thing at one point where if you were staying on property, you could reserve your fast passes sooner than other people?
Yeah, right? That was a perk.
Yeah. So again, like maybe these are all things that it's like, annual pass holders get, stuff like, Genie Plus and whatever. But maybe at some point they'll consider, incentivizing people who are not staying on annual passes. And like you said, maybe that's the play, is not to completely remove annual pass holders, but maybe to not make it necessarily as attractive as, somebody who's planning to go there for a week, that, a person staying there for a week gets a benefit of some sort, right? It's not to say that, the annual pass holders go to the back of the line all the time, but I think Disney does need to be cognizant of this, because it's a weird balancing act. Like, you don't want to swing too far one way or the other, because I also see that if they offer too many things for non-annual pass holders, that actually ends up hurting them as well. And, gets us into a place where the parks are just full all the time and everybody's unhappy. And,
that's a good point. I want to like kind of end on this note, Trevor, is like, while I don't 100% disagree with his logic here, I also know that Disney has, and Universal, and all the other theme parks have people that think about this stuff all the time, right? And do the math on it. And I can tell you unequivocally that Disney and Universal are going to do the thing that makes them the most money, right? Like, that's at the end of the day.
This
is
true.
Yeah. So if they felt like not selling annual passes would make them the most money, then they would stop selling annual passes, right? Like, that's at the end of the day what I truly believe. I know that's like a really heartless way to think about it, but
so
like, they're company, they're publicly traded companies. They have responsibility to shareholders to make money, and that's what they're trying to do. But at the same time, when they Disney World didn't start selling annual passes for a while, locals were mad, right? I mean, Trevor, remember we talked to that one person when we did the meetup when you and I were together, was talking about how they couldn't buy annual passes, and they were annoyed because they didn't want to spend the money. They just spent $200 to go to the park for one day. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of things that you miss out on when you don't have the passes.
True. But so let me, I'll throw this one back at you just to counter that. And for some food for thought for everybody is, yes, I know you're saying that they've got people that are looking at this stuff and they're looking at what will make them the most amount of money. Those people sometimes have tunnel vision though.
That's true.
And I will say that, even though you can have the most knowledgeable people in the world, sometimes they do need to think outside the box, and sometimes they do need to explore these things from an angle other than the corporate typical one, because that's really how, a company like Disney gets innovative, gets creative, and stands out from the rest, is that, they shouldn't always be following the trail of money. And they should actually be looking at it from an angle of, hey, could this actually make, like, sometimes the standing out and the being a trailblazer will actually make them more in the long term, but they need to stop looking at quarter over quarter revenue in order to do that.
and that will make the shareholders very displeased. I don't like looking at anything from like a strictly business, lens, because I do think Disney also cares about customer service, and they do care about doing things that customers want. I mean, you can see it all the time. Guests give feedback if they change things. Like it's they listen, they do. But I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know the answer to this. It's an interesting idea, and truthfully, I never would have thought about it. But I liked the thought-provoking nature of it.
Yeah, this was a good conversation, but I think we should probably call it here.
we should. Yeah, we should. Yeah. You should. All right. Well, go ahead.
Yeah. So that was the wait list. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and hopefully this has given everybody something to think about and maybe something to talk about. So
yeah, let's discuss this in the group. I want to hear what everybody else's thoughts on it are, and please chime in if you're on our Discord or in our group. We would be interested to hear what you have to say about this whole thought, and what you think they should do with annual pass holders. All right, that's been the waitlist.
This is Skipper Albert Awol, the voice of the jungle, signing off from Welcome Home Podcast on the DVC.
Do a huddle when we hit its hair. How she can cuddle is no man's affair. I looked around from pole to pole, found her in a sugar bowl.